So about Rawls' theory of justice. I mean, Rawls was actually a personal friend, and I think his work is very good. And I like it. I don't really think it applies very well to the real problems that are arising. It's interesting in a kind of an abstract way to try to derive principles of justice from pretty abstract considerations. But when he tried himself to apply it to real situations, it became a recipe for liberal democracy, internationalism, the kind of things that many of us would think are fine, but they don't really follow from the theory, and there's no real basis for them that I can see. And he didn't try to address the complex reality of social and economic life, the power system and how it works. So, for example, you can't study the United States without recognizing that there is a very class-conscious, unusually class-conscious, very powerful business community, always fighting a bitter class war, never relentless, and unusually powerful. That's one of the reasons for the difference between the United States and Europe. And you just can't study the United States without paying attention to that. They have overwhelming power over the political system. They basically frame what happens in the media. Without just even introducing that factor, you're just not discussing the country. So it doesn't matter what the abstract theories say. And there are other things like that. I mean, there are other things about the United States which really have to be considered seriously. It's a very frightened country, and always has been, back to colonial days. There's some good scholarship on this. But there's a reason why people didn't laugh when Reagan strapped on his cowboy boots and said, "We're under threat from Nicaragua, from Grenada," Saddam Hussein, whoever. It's a frightened country, and always has been. You've got to pay attention to that, as a cultural fact. And there are other basic things that have to be considered if you want to talk seriously about the country. And Rawls, it just wasn't his interest. I mean, he was sympathetic, he's a decent liberal, but it's not his concern, and the theory doesn't try to reach questions like that. So I don't see, it's kind of intellectually interesting, but I don't see much we can do with it. Actually, I'm personally interested in it because he kind of played it down after a lot of criticism, but the model that he used was a linguistic model, very explicitly. There was so much criticism from philosophers who hated it that he withdrew it, but its recent work is bringing it back, and that was not uninteresting. He was actually following ideas that David Hume expressed, and that are sort of in Kant, more or less, that there has to be some instinctual base for our moral judgments. And he thought he could use models of language to be suggestive about how to construct a theory of the instinctual base from which people can draw indefinitely many moral judgments in new situations. That's a reasonable framework, and there's actually interesting work going on about it, but it doesn't begin to reach problems of human concern. That's hard. I mean, even in the hard sciences, it wasn't until pretty recently that they had much to say to engineers and doctors and so on. It's a hard job. Yeah.